So if you can't find parking, you can give us some time. That's why you guys are going to be up first, because it is going to be removed under sequence, change the sequence in the model. So.
Okay, before we get started, calling to order, the meetings. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I just want to thank everybody for changing their schedules to accommodate us early meeting tonight. It's much appreciated. Establish a quorum, truly. Okay, board approval of agenda, change the sequence of removal items.
So the student representative update will be removed. Caden had a doctor's appointment. He was the one who was scheduled to present. So Rod had asked that if the board has any input or questions, I'd like to show the student reps to send it to him, and we'll get it to them for the next meeting. I will be foregoing the district administrator update for this meeting. And we're going to remove the school safety and security assessment review and move that to the next meeting so that Chief Dewar can attend. He had a training, town training today, so it's important that he be here to present with us, because I think we have a pretty comprehensive presentation. So we'd like to move that back to March.
Just one question. Is there supposed to be a link on the student representative update that we would ask questions and send back, or?
So normally there would be.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't missing.
No,
Okay,
and I
no
think what
problem.
he was referring to is a good question, Julie, is I think if the board has wants any input from students on any of the agenda items here today and stuff to share with Rod, we'll give it to them.
Perfect. Just wanted to make
Yep,
sure
it's a
if
good
they
question.
took time and put it together that I reviewed it for them, so thanks.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the set updates.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? All right. So announcements.
No announcements.
Okay, celebrations.
So celebrations would be the announcement of our salutatorian and valedictorian from the class of 2024. The salutatorian is Caden Fox, and the valedictorian will be Lillian Opie. This is going to be Dr. Watson. Dr. Watson, I just announced the Val Sal.
Okay.
Is there anything you'd like to add about those two
No,
students?
no, just that you mentioned the ones pending the.
No, for the academic excellence, we didn't get, that's later in the agenda. We just did the Val Sal.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay, we'll get to the consent agenda items. Meeting notification, minutes from the meeting of January 8th, retirements and resignations, hirings, and the spring pool for closures. Comments or? Okay.
I think that would be appropriate.
We'd like the minutes to reflect our appreciation for everybody that has put in a lot of years here through their retirement or just moving on somewhere else. The time here that was put in for our kids is very much appreciated.
And specifically, I would like to specifically acknowledge Todd Sinkin and Cheryl Ashbeck, who spent their career here and are retiring. So I agree, thankful for everyone and what they've done, but a specific acknowledgement to Todd.
And I'd like to specifically acknowledge Luann LaRose, who retired last year. We couldn't find anyone, so she came back for another year. Quite a commitment.
Yes.
So with all of that, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda items, recognizing everything we just said.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, information only items, got a coalition.
Kevin Kolish? Yeah.
So we just wanted to talk to you today about the power of our PLC time every Wednesday during early release. We call it PLC time, and that we feel that it's really increasing the student learning. And the three of us are here on behalf of the whole Guiding Coalition. Mrs. Sam Cum, who has just moved from the coaching literacy coach to ELA 7th and 8th grade, and Mrs. Leslie Neufeld, who is ELA for the junior high as well, and myself, Jody Moore, first grade teacher. We have 3 examples for you today. One will be coming from kindergarten and their math common assessment overview. Another will be coming from first grade and our mini coaching cycle with our literacy coach. And the last will be some math data from the middle school IXL 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. We're hoping to keep it brief. Kindergarten has been working on this during our Wednesday early release time. What it basically is, monitoring is our essential skills, which are located here in this category, for example, counting to 100 by 1s or counting to 100 by 10s. And then the testing tools may be here, the quarter that it's assessed here. If we were to show you the whole document, there are fewer down that say just quarter 2, 3, and 4, but not quarter 1. And then, of course, this information is used to group students within the classroom for intervention time. It's also shared with the reading specialist and the building principal and the special education team, so they can keep track of those students who are registering lower on the test than we would expect. It's also helpful to look at our scope and sequence when we're talking about, well, how many times do we expect them to compare 2 sets of objects, or how many times are we asking them to name the last number that we've said when counting an object of things. When I was talking with Mrs. Peterson and the kindergarten team, they also shared that this is very helpful when a new teacher comes on board. What kinds of things are the essential, what are we really looking for, and how frequently am I assessing that? So there is also other documents they could share with us, but I said one is enough. It was a document that showed the scores of all these tests and how the students are moving. They're also tracking those things as well. And all of those things were worked on during our early release time. All right, so another example we wanted to share with you today is coming from the first grade team, and I was privileged to work with them in my literacy coach role earlier this year. And so after taking the fall Fast Bridge Screener, first grade noticed a need for students to be working on increasing their word segmenting skills. And so as a team, we decided to focus on word segmenting with our students. And so based on those results, we then worked on gathering resources and looking at how can we best help our students improve their word segmenting skills. We each, brought ideas to the table and decided on the best ones. Then from there, we made a scope and sequence for those activities and mapped it out over the course of a couple of months between the fall Fast Bridge Screener and then the winter Fast Bridge Screener, and then worked on implementing them each week. So the first grade team did one of those activities every day, the same activity for a week, and then switched to a new one. Some of the activities included doing a head, shoulders, knees, and toes game, robot talk, a segmenting cheer, and some bead sliders that the students got to make in class. Each activity was 5 minutes, and it was an oral activity that they did each day. And Mrs. Moore provided some very cute video clips so you can get a little taste of what they were doing.
It should tell you first we sing head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Yes.
And they get all giggly, that's the buy-in, and then we get to the content here.
Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Try the word clap. How many was that? 4. Cool. Try the word sled. Last one for now. Try the word claps. How many was that one? Awesome.
Clearly, we're working on 4-part phonemes.
can I put? Okay. No,
Mental systems improved.
might need you to help me, Deb. And then here's a picture of them with their beat slider. So basically they would slide the beat over for each sound that they hear. Little video. Okay, so then we just wanted to share with you the post-assessment data. So again, comparing the fall screener to the winter screener. So some good results. One was that the amount of students who were identified as high risk, specifically for word segmenting, that decreased in all 3 of the first grade classes. And then 34 out of the 37 students increased their word segmenting score from the fall to the winter screener. And then just kind of collectively the data here. So this is the whole first grade. So you can see in September, there were 19 students identified as high risk in this category. In January, there were only 4 identified as high risk. So then we noticed a difference there of 15 students. For some
Which was
risk,
awesome.
yeah, that's huge.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's huge. In September, there were 5 who were at some risk. And then 14 in January, so that number obviously went up, but that's because some of those high-risk kiddos came down. And then 13 at no risk went up to 19 at no risk, so a total of 6 students who were no longer at any risk for word segmenting. So we were very happy with the results there.
Is this the first time you collected any data like that? Like,
Yes.
would you have last year's data of
No.
the same? Okay, so
The
you'll be able to take that then and like look year to year
Yes.
on,
Yeah,
yeah, awesome.
The screener we gave 3 completely different tests than we've ever tested before. We also noticed that we don't really teach what they're screening. So now we have to think about how we're going to teach that and teach it the way the test is testing. Because they're automaticity tests, it's not just can you do it, but how many can you do in 60 seconds? And that's a whole nother component to a test.
Thank you.
This is our middle school math data, and something new that the math team is trying this year is they use IXL, which is an online program that has math skills that are specifically aligned to our math curriculum. So they are using this data to do a bi-weekly diagnostic. So every other week, the kids take a diagnostic so we can track specifically the skills where they're well below grade level, or on grade level. So this has been really helpful for the math team to kind of collaborate on this data and then like adjust instruction accordingly as they're going through. And it's really nice for the math team because their math curriculum that they're using is specifically tied to IXL. So there are specific skills that they're doing each lesson that tie to IXL. So they're using this the PLC time to look at this data for individual students from IXL, and then they're using also daily exit tickets in classes and assessments to guide the instruction to help them build their math foundation, because in the upper grades, we as the junior high or middle school teachers, we do our own win time. So when we have the intervention time, we are the interventionists for the kids, so we are using that IXL data to kind of group our win groups, so we know where our highest risk kiddos, where our lower risk kiddos, where our kids that need enrichment. So that's been really, really helpful. And then we just kept that kind of short, sweet, and to the point, because it's a lot of data and a lot of skills. But we really feel that these PLCs are powerful, and we would like to express our appreciation to the board for giving us this time, because we know that it's not easy to ask that of the community, but it really has been an invaluable resource for the staff. And then, do you have any questions for us?
I can just tell you that presentations like this are what's going to keep it moving forward, because this is a great presentation. It represents a real positive forward progression, and it's great to see, and I just want to tell you all, keep up the great work.
What does IXL stand for?
I think it's just the acronym, like I excel, like I'm getting better.
Okay.
But it's just the name of the platform. But we recently discovered this year that they have an ELA component. So as of November, the ELA team has been implementing IXL as well. And it covers a lot of those gap skills that we've been seeing in our curriculum. So we're really closing the gap in ELA. Like as a whole, my 6th, 7th, and 8th graders have made since November, collectively as an entire 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, over 8 months of progress as a whole, which is pretty incredible for just starting the program.
Fantastic, thanks for sharing.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Budget creation.
That's the
So to be respectful of your time, I'm trying to, it's a little over 20 minutes, so I'm gonna talk really fast. I was talking really fast, just 22 minutes. And I've got, for each of the board members, and if you guys would like to, I've got like the printouts of the slides. If you have questions as we go on, you can ask them at the end, because I might get to it a little bit later, and I don't want you to lose your point of reference if you decide you wanna ask a question. So the budget process overview, I'm going to go through how the district approaches the budget, each employee group's responsibilities, our timeline and steps to the budget presentation, or excuse me, preparation, how the budget pieces, I did not do that, I'll do that. How the budget pieces fit together, our tax levy explanation, our revenue limit impact on our taxpayers, the formulas, 23-24's actual, 24-25's projected, and I'm gonna put all the pieces together. So in any one year, the business district office for any school district is probably looking at 3 different years worth of budgets as we go along. So as we look at this, we're collecting staff input and required items through the upcoming school year. The school board will approve in the spring salary increases, wage increases for hourly people, benefits, any benefit increases that there's going to be. The school board will also have to approve our benefit deduction changes for our health insurance. Even though it's through the co-op, we need to decide what our premium splits will be, if there's an HSA and how much the HSA district's contribution will be, any additional benefits that we're going to use to try to attract new hires. I'm constantly looking and reviewing legislation changes, both at the federal and Wisconsin level. And I try to always assume the lowest amount of funding until legislation gets passed so that we're not overshooting what we're hoping for. We look at other sources of revenue. So in most districts, everyone is a grant writer. So if you look at everyone in the elementary, if they see something that they want for their classroom, they're gonna write a grant for it. So they're going to do something else for it. The bigger scope grants, we try to work on as an administrative team and try and work on those. And then projection. I am constantly looking at our numbers ahead. We make the most out of all of the resources we do have. We spend responsibly. This fiscal year, though, and last fiscal year, saw some unique challenges since we didn't have the funding supports that the district was used to. And I'm trying to spread the message to all staff and supervisors to not spend beyond their budgets this year. And that's a message they're not used to hearing. So previous to this, we've been funded well and we haven't had that issue. If I had to say the hardest part of this fiscal year was telling people, no, you can't spend that money because you didn't budget it, or if you've already spent it, now what are we gonna reduce out of your building level or your area to help cover the difference? Because as you know, we approved a deficit budget this year. This must have a timer on it. It must be timing out. I want to be speaking faster right now. So every employee that works here has a responsibility somehow in the budget. They may not physically complete a form or do a document or a Google Sheet or anything, but they all need to be cognitive of what's going to improve their work area. So we may have a custodian or a food service or a child care worker that says, hey, this is really going to help the children learn, or we're going to be more effective or efficient at our job. They need to let their supervisors know that. So that's something kind of ongoing. Then the teachers and supervisors will create their budgets based on, gathering quotes from vendors. I try to really encourage that so they can lock in pricing. Supervisors, in addition, have to build their area or their building budget, and they all kind of have the requirement to stay within the dollars of the year before, but we still do a zero-based budget. So if we're trying to, cut back someplace, somebody would perhaps have to not have their full amount of their budget. We did a little something different this last year. At the district level, Mr. Nutt is looking at curriculum, conferences, travel, field trips, and software, and trying to bring those into, financial scope and the purpose of, what is this conference for? How does it fit into our district goal?
Pam, can I jump in really briefly on that? And the premise behind it is to make sure that what we're doing with the building principles, like we do it as a team approach, it fits in with what our goals are and with our mission and vision. That if we're sending folks to conferences, where does it play into the larger scope of things that we're doing? So it's not meant to be like a micromanagement per se, but it's when we're having to watch our budget. It's to make sure we're spending those dollars wisely. We do that in conjunction with the administrators in their departments, and I feel like it was pretty effective. There were some learning curves the first year, but I think we'll get better at it as we continue to move on.
So then when things get into my office, so all of these kind of trickle down or up, however you want to look at it. So I review everyone's documentation, make sure it's quoted correctly, and that the dollar amounts are could be grant funded, so we could maybe move some things. I build a budget then for every area that's not submitted by a supervisor. I input all that information into Skyward, and when we budget, we need to budget every single fund. And again, we're projecting. As you know, we start in June with an initial budget, and we go to October. So I help prepare our budget for publication, the budget hearing documentations for the school board and the public, and then all the budget revisions and revision publications that have to be completed throughout the year. And all staff are given an exact timeline when it comes to the due dates that they have to get their documents to trickle up. So in mid-February, I provide to everyone a budget request form. We're still doing it in paper, just because not everybody has access to the Skyward budgeting components. I do a video or a live presentation to staff. I like the video because they can go back and watch it. If it's in the evening, I'm not missing out coaches. Mid-March, the budget request forms are due to the supervisor. Mid-April, the supervisors have to summarize their budgets, get them to me. Mid-May, supervisors will notify their staff if their budget request has been approved. That was standard operating procedure. It might have to change a little bit going forward based on the fact that the funding is getting worse. Mid-May, requisitions that the teachers for their classroom budgets and stuff that were approved have to do their requisitions so that purchase orders can be done. Then in May, all the requisitions have to come to me. In early June, we're doing the budget publication, budget hearing, and we set our initial levy. Mid-July, all the purchase orders go to vendors. The majority of them will still hold those quotes from March, February, which is awesome. Not all of them will. In mid-October, we get our certification of our general aid by the state of Wisconsin. And then in late October, we have to have it done by November 1st. Our budget revisions are presented to the board. Our final levy is set, and the budget revisions are published to the public in the paper. And the budget information that I provide also has a guide that is not a static document and is available to all staff, so even our new staff when they start, I supply that. So it shows them how to do requisitions and stuff throughout the year. If things change, I'll update that information highlighted in yellow, like Kalahari is forever changing how they get payments from school districts, so I have to keep updating that one, for example. How they can get quotes and who they contact for quotes is all in that document as well. So how do all these pieces fit together? So it literally is a puzzle. So our building and area budgets that are provided by the supervisors, I will do the budgeting for staffing based on what the board has approved. Our bus transportation is contracted, and we have our contract out a few years, which the board has approved, so that can be budgeted. Utilities and things like that, I just do as kind of a standard CPI adjustment. Our grants for federal and Wisconsin, we can do projected and actuals, and revenues and expenses. A lot of them are the same every year, some of them are not, but they typically will put out a funding is greater, funding is less, and you can kind of estimate where we're gonna fall. Sally, one of my favorite accounting terms, same as last year, is used for a lot of revenue and costs at very little from year to year. Perkins grant, youth apprenticeship grant. Those things very rarely change by any significant dollar amount. Our categorical aids, which are our aids that are outside of the revenue limit. We have a per pupil categorical aid, our pupil and high cost of transportation aid, and our AGR, or as a lot of you probably remember it as SAGE. We have sparsity aid, which is based because of how many pupils we have per square mile of district. Common school funds, which is spent all on library and digital learning needs. Then the revenue limit worksheet, and I'll go through that in some detail in a minute. We'll do all of our Wisconsin general aids and our local levies. And for this, the projections are already starting in January or February. I typically start in January right after the second Friday count, and we continue throughout the summer and fall, looking at property values, student membership, tax exempt aid, transfer of service, and other factors. The final revenue limit worksheet can be calculated after the certified general aid in mid-October. Then the amounts from Wisconsin are set, so the tax exempt aid is set, transfer of service documents are done if we get any of that money. We will also know what our private school vouchers will be at that time. And then we set our levy. So June again is our initial budget hearing, our official annual meeting. We do our initial tax levy. Then October, we'll do our budget revisions and our final levies. So some very important definitions. You can't just say property values. And I think this is a misconception for a lot of people. Within a school district, the general property holder. So an equalized property value is a fair market value of all properties within a district as determined by the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. They determine that number based off of sales in the area. So they'll go back and they'll look at the sales for the last so many years. With our, the sale of homes, everybody knows the price of a home has skyrocketed. So equalized property values are going up more rapidly than what they have 10 years ago. Assessed property value is for each property within the municipality as determined by each municipality's assessor. So that's your specific house. How much is your house or your property worth? So a district will distribute their certified tax levy among all municipalities within their district based on the proportion of equalized property value each municipality has compared to total equalized value. For us, that number changes every year, that percentage for every municipality, and we have 14 municipalities. Then each municipality will distribute their portion of our levy among their residents based on the residents' assessed property value. So the actual tax assessed by a municipality rarely equals the district mill rate. So a lot of people say, well, the mill rate's going up, the mill rate's going down, and they assume their property taxes should too. But it's all how the municipality then decides they're going to separate it out and put it to maybe a university or a tech college and how all their pieces fit together. So to calculate our mill rate, we take our total tax levy and we divide by our equalized property value. So this last year saw a significant decrease in mill rate because we lost, as I mentioned, that TIF district went off, so our property values went up. So if we look at the mill rate, if the tax,
Can I ask a quick question about that? The TIF goes off, which then just means that what was under the
that whole
TIF,
value goes into the equalized property value because
right?
it wasn't getting taxed previously.
Correct. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it was a lesser amount that the district got. It's just the TIF district is now paying. So they take, okay, thank you.
Correct. They
Thank you.
assume
Super.
some of the
Perfect.
costs.
Super helpful. Thank you.
So if you look at the total tax levy, if it stayed identical every year, but equalized property values increase, then the rate decreases, and vice versa. So that's what happened to us last year. However, if the equalized property value stays identical year after year, and the levy decreases, then the mill rate decreases, and then the opposite. So if one increases, the other increases. So that's kind of how those fluctuate. And the tax levy is all local source money. You'll see a theme, pies, because it's the best way to explain a revenue limit worksheet, is it's like a pie. So a general operation has 4 primary formulas. So we're going to have our current year base revenue, our revenue limit with all exemptions, our general operations tax levy, and our total tax levy. There's about a dozen secondary and tertiary formulas that go into that. Those are the 4 primary ones. These worksheets, if you're really interested in diving into them, are all available on the DPI's website, and you can look at longitudinal data all the way back in time. So many of the items are out of our control. So private school vouchers. We've talked before that we have no idea who those students are. We can't even verify that there are students, resident students that are going to a private school. We have no way of even knowing that. Prior year levy chargebacks. I'll get to that in a second. But what that is a municipality has paid us money, but they were not able to collect the money from wherever. If it's a business, it's a personal. And they have to petition the state in order to get, they petition and say, we haven't got this money, we're not going to get this money, now we want it to go back, and so the school district has to pay it back. What we get to do next year then is claim that money and over levy, basically not over levy, but levy for that amount so that we can accept that amount and then that'll get split again between all municipalities. So we'll get our money back eventually. We're just not going to get it next year. So to get our current year base revenue, we look at prior year numbers. So they take all prior year numbers to calculate base revenue. They take our base revenue divided by our prior year per year member average, get base revenue per member. So this year for us it's around 10,400. And then we get our allowed member change. So we were allowed to go up to 11,000. Then we'll get our maximum revenue per person. And then our current membership through your rolling average. If they do a rolling average, we're trying to smooth out those high spikes some school districts have. Then we take our revenue limit without exemptions and we add our recurring and our non-recurring exemptions. Transfer of service, our vouchers, our tax exempt dates, things like that. So then we get our revenue limit without exemptions. Excuse me, tax exempt dates are after that. So revenue limit with all exemptions, we subtract our certified general aid, or we subtract our state tax aid, and then we get a general tax levy. So the way this works is, if the general aid from the state goes up, tax levy goes down, vice versa. So then we'll take our general operations levy, which for our school district is only Fund 10 and Fund 38. We add our referendum debt. we add our community services, and then our prior year chargebacks, and then we get our total tax levy. So for this current school year, we had a mill rate of 5.18. And so you can see that our revenue limit worksheet, up here, we'll look, and these were our state aids, that was our state tax exempt. And then that would be our general operations levy. So that's our Fund 10, Fund 38, total of 2.1 million. And our Fund 39 for our referendum debt for the CTE building. And then the Fund 80 for fitness center and childcare, and then we had a chargeback that we paid last school year for $143. That was our total levy. So in 23-24, we had an increase in revenue limit with all exemptions of $175,000, or about 2.9%. CPI for last year was 8.1. So if we look at that, you can see it's only, our revenue limit increased only a third of what CPI increased. And I had touched on this a while ago in a different presentation, but I just want to reiterate it, that there's been no inflationary adjustment inside revenue limits since 2009-10 school year. So that's 14 years. The accumulated per pupil amount inside the revenue limit that is behind inflation is $3,235 per member. That's huge. So the maximum revenue limit right now for 23-24 school year is $11,000. Yet, for private school vouchers, even though we don't know who these students are, for a 9-12 grade student, we're paying $12,387. So it costs us more to educate a private school student than what we can allowed to get to educate at home.
Can you say that one more time with the 12, like, is that what we pay out? No, that's what.
We only get $11,000. So right here, we get $11,000. In our private school voucher, for every student in grade 9-12 that gets private school vouchers, our district pays $12,387. So this was something I talked about that we should discuss with our legislators to show up. But that to me is, I mean, we should never have to pay more than what we're allowed to educate our own students. So going to 24-25, these are very preliminary projections. A lot of it I am using same as last year amount. Some of these numbers I do know. For example, one of our municipalities had a chargeback of $22,403. We do have to levy for that. So with that chargeback in there, our projected levy at this point is 5.53. Our mill rate without the chargeback, so if we wanted to compare apples to the prior year, it would be about 5.49, and I only use the 2% property equalization value increase. So I'm hoping we get the extra $325 that we're supposed to get to bring, up our revenue limit. So we're looking to have a general tax levy of 2.23 million. Our total levy would be just under 3 million. With all of that, our increase over the prior year is only going to be about 1.9%. The CPI is going to be, it has already been approved at 4.12%. So if we look at that with the 2 years combined, our revenue limit only increased 4.8%. CPI increased 12.13%. So we only increased about 2/5 of what CPI was in those 2 years. And there's no biennial budget, so that means no more aid, no more inflationary aid inside the revenue limit other than the $325. And our dollar amount we'll be paying for private school vouchers next year. Again, we'll get $11,325 to educate our own students. Private school students for grade 9 through 12 will be $12,731. So if we put our federal, Wisconsin, and local pieces all together, I'm just using our big federal grants, I'm not using our small ones like Bergen's, and the real small ones. So we have some that are dispersed by state formula. In other words, they're federal money, but the state figures out how we're going to get this money. The IDA and the ESSA funds are both in Fund 10 and Fund 27. They are, majority of them are driven off of our free and reduced or level of poverty in the school district. I do not know yet what 24-25 is going to be, so I'm using it the same as 23-24. I anticipate it to stay the same and go way down, just because our membership count has went down. ESSER 1, 2, and 3, where our some of our COVID relief dollars, we're projected to spend that all in this school year. So it'll be $0 for next year. That Kids Ahead grant in the back to school supplement, we're also aids put out there in part of the COVID relief packages. So those were fully used in 22-23, so there's no money in 23-24 or 24-25. Monies that come directly from federal agencies. The REAP grant is a small rural schools grant. It is tied to the title money that we get. So it'll stay somewhere around the $40,000 to $45,000 amount. So I'm just using the same as what I know it is for this year. Our emergency connectivity fund, that was to purchase computers and other connective items to help remote learning. So that money is also gone as of 22-23. And then Medicaid received for eligible student services. This money usually stays between $70,000 to $77,000, so I just used the same that we are estimating it for the 23-24 school year. So as you can see, the difference between 22-23 to 24-25, this one was a decrease of 48% in federal money. So if we add in our revenue limit worksheet, our state and local funds, that's these amounts, and then the revenue limit vouchers paid to private school, because those are monies we don't get. I'm assuming this number is going to be the same, but it most likely will not, because they've lowered the poverty level amount went up to 220% of the federal poverty level now, so more people will qualify. So if we look at this in 23-24, our total sources is 0.01 negative from the prior year. And the consumer price index was 8.11. In 24-25, we're projecting at about a $16,000 increase. Percent of change is about 0.25, with CPI at 4.12. So the net over a 2-year period of time is a shortfall of about 98% of CPI. And we are not unique in this situation. Majority of schools, or unless they're in a very affluent area, don't rely on revenue limit worksheet or revenue limits much, because they're highly aided elsewhere with property taxes usually. It's a pretty grim reality for a lot of school districts.
I think that's a really important point is that those districts that are the property rich districts are not.
This is not.
This is not important to them as important
as
as
much
to those
as
of
it
us
is
that are
affecting
in.
us. So I believe, Jason, you and I both, there's I want to say 300 school districts have gone or will be gone.
Out of 474.
Going to operational referendums just to make ends meet.
And many of the ones who aren't, frankly, are those districts that are not reliant upon the aid.
So that was a ton of information. More than 20 minutes, but were there any questions?
It's okay. What about?
I have two, again, simple questions. One, Fund 80,
Yes.
I know only certain things can be in that, but is there any limit?
What do you mean limit?
Like,
Can we
could
levy?
we levy an unlimited amount of money? Is there any
We
rules?
can,
on
but
it?
it has to stay in Fund 80.
Okay,
Yep, so we can.
okay,
We could levy, example, our first year we started the childcare, we over levied by like $100,000 to build up, because we would be paying our equipment, so we are allowed to do that.
they
But
just
it
have to stay in their
Fund
lanes.
80.
Got
Yeah,
it.
it has to stay in its lane.
Yeah, it's gonna stay in its lane, but okay, that's
Is that
fine.
a question?
Yeah, and my other question was just a little bit more for me to understand, the private school and this 84,000 that was coming out. Do we receive that and we pay that? Do we get penalized by that out of our, like, I'm not sure I'm really understanding what that is.
Okay, so if we look at the revenue limit worksheet, the dollar amount is in there at $84,000, that is part, so if we go back. So it's part of this number here. So it would be part of the non-recurring exemptions. So that's where that money is going to be in this non-recurring exemption. So we levy for it. In June, we get a bill and we pay it. We don't get a physical bill, it gets netted out of our final aid payment, but that's how it gets paid. So so we're charged it, we can levy our
We
taxpayers
collect it
for
and
it,
send it out.
and then we pay the
Bills.
state, and then the state pays the private
Disperses it.
schools.
Got it, and they're charging us more than what the worksheet of what they're actually paying us.
They're charging, the voucher is for more dollars per 9-12 student than what we are allowed within the revenue limit to educate our own students.
Julie, that's an excellent question, and that's where it comes in, where our revenue limit comes into play per pupil, is that there might be districts that have that can levy higher per pupil.
Sure.
That would cover it in our particular district, because that limit, where our limit's at, yes, we're paying out more for those students than we can collect.
Okay.
So there are
That's
some
helpful.
school districts that have $25,000 per pupil.
So they're making,
Right, I saw the
Yes.
map when I was at the school board
Yeah.
convention.
but we're not one of them, unfortunately. So if we were able to levy, if our limit was at 12.8, we would break even, but yes, so we're,
Got it.
And I
Okay,
gotta
that's
be
just
clear,
helpful.
it's really of no fault of our own that it got stuck there. What
No.
happened was it was a low number in 2009-10, it was like, I wanna say $9,400, because we were very cost conscious, I guess is the best way to put it. And we were not educating our students, but that's what we were paying per pupil at the time. But then the Act 10 came and then it like froze that number. And then it built after that. So that's why when it says there's been no inflationary adjustment since the 9-10 year, that's why they started at that point, because that's when that really had an impact.
because they originally locked in 1992, is that accurate, when they set
That I'm not
limits? I believe it was, and then they
sure.
readjusted,
but
but then they froze, which is where.
So I just want to say thank you so much
Mhm.
for putting it
This
together
is
like this.
excellent.
This is the best and most comprehensive understanding that I've had in my entire time on the board. Like, super helpful. And I might have a couple follow-up questions after I digest it. I didn't ask any ahead of time because I'm like, I need her to actually talk about this out loud before, but it's like you put it together so clearly and easy to understand. Thank you so much.
I have one quick question about the Fund 80. So the revenues that are generated through that have to stay in the Fund 80?
Yes.
But so like, the Fund 80 pays like a rent for,
Yes, so that is a rental agreement payment. In fact, that by DPI regulations has to be done. So the fitness center and the childcare pay rent for use of the rooms, the electricity. Fitness center pays for the use of the equipment as well.
so would that be a two-way street if something for Fund 80 was
If
funded?
you could justify it, yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
could the school district rent personal trainer from if that was funded?
Yeah, yes. If
Does
that was-
Does Fund 80 pay for its portion of administration?
No,
Or
we
what-
can't, that's one thing, like food service can't do that either, we can't prorate that.
Okay,
So our administration that we have for our director and our assistant director can come out of the child care, but like Jason's time, my time. we
So even though
cannot
you're paying the
prorate that.
payroll for all of the
cannot.
staff,
Correct.
none of that cost can actually go in there.
Correct.
that's wrong.
Lots of things are wrong.
Because it's a community
Lots
service
of things.
fund.
Yeah.
And Fund 10 is the cost to educate the pupils. I guess that's the best way.
You know, and I think, Pam, something I want to mention to the board, I know we've talked about this before, and Pam, you can tell me if this is too simplistic. My explanation of it is I often hear from community members when the state aid comes out, the announcement, and people are like, Pittsville's gonna get an additional $374,000, and I have people say to me, giddy up. Well, that pie that Pam talked about, that looked delicious, by the way, all that means is that our local taxpayer piece of the pie gets smaller. It doesn't mean the pie gets bigger.
Right.
And that's just a common misconception is that like before I began filling the role I filled as an administrator, I would be a teacher and I'd be like, hey, like there's more money here, but it's not more money. It's just how that pie is divided up. And it does take the tax impact more off of our local taxpayers,
Well,
but you
even-
don't get additional monies.
Even building up and increasing, building in our community and property owners and having higher property value only means I don't have to pay as much because they're gonna pay part of it, not that the school actually
Yes.
gets more.
Correct.
Correct.
Unless they have kids and bring kids to the
Yes.
picture, which then would add
Yes.
student count. So it's not like enhancing the economy of your community and having more tax base creates an opportunity to build into the school. It just means, which is exactly what happened with the
It's
tip.
exactly, it's just,
Got
you could split the pie into
Yeah.
more pieces and it's not a coincidence, this is a lemon.
I think you know me well enough to know I don't like being the glasses half empty guy all the time. I really don't with this stuff. But honestly, so many parts of the budget, the way it works, are stacked against small rural districts like ourselves. And another one would be, 15% of our students are open enrolled in the Pittsville School District. They come in, we attract students. Well, we don't even get fully funded. We only get $8,800 per student for students that open enroll in. We don't get the full amount. The whole district keeps it. Now that works for us too, but we are positive, like heavy on the positive side. So even that kind of feels like it begins to feel like the entire system is kind of set up to be a challenge.
To a voucher, it's not the 8,000, it's 12,730.
For private school
For private
vouchers.
school vouchers,
For
yes.
private school
And we
vouchers.
don't know how many kids are going or if they're charging us.
They just bill us.
They won't tell us,
any
no,
information.
you
They
don't
just give us a
know
bill.
which child it is or even if they are in the right boundaries.
So we
Even if
can't
there are
confirm. Yeah, we're not allowed to
You're right.
confirm whether or not they are
Right.
truly, we cannot have that information. I think
So if you spread the message, what you've heard, because there is a lot of reporting out there, the headlines that, you notice how much more money the governor put into school districts. Well, not really, because he put a huge amount into the school property tax credit relief, which goes to the municipalities. So it looked like it was this great school tax credit relief, but it's not, it doesn't help school at all. It helped all the municipalities. So, I mean, sometimes the language that is put out there isn't that great. And when Jason said, they'll say, oh, you got an extra 300,000. Well, no. That's 300,000. That just means we levied 300,000 less.
And anything that's within those per pupil limits, we're locked in at. So even if they
Yeah.
come out and say if they give out money, that's outside. We can't, once we're at 11, we can't take anymore.
Right.
We don't get any of that.
We don't get any extra. Correct.
So the districts that were fiscally responsible back in 2009-10, when they set those limits, you were actually punished for being fiscally responsible because you had lower per pupil limits because you were spending less money. So you were locked in at those. And if you were an extravagant spending district, then you got a higher limit so you can continue to, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
So we're giving $12,731 per private school vouchers, right?
That's
That's
what we pay
what we
out.
get charged, yes. So we can collect it and levy for it, and then we pay it back to the state.
So if these private schools receive this money,
Yes,
Yes.
and they're still getting money from the parents.
most likely.
But that's a relief.
It's up to
from
the
parents.
Right,
individual.
it's a
Yeah,
relief
something
for
like
the
school levy,
parents
sorry.
below the 220% of the federal poverty level.
Yeah,
So if
and
they apply for it, it's 220% of federal poverty level. Is what the 24, 25, or 20, I'm not sure if it was the 23, 24, or 24, 25 year, is what the private school voucher. But there's other things too there's other rules and how they can apply for it, but that's something that the private school parents would apply for their children.
And Chris, to clarify, and that was accurate what we heard before, is that we only get the 11,000 325 if we get that per pupil increase, and we have to pay out the 12.8. So additional monies that we are not.
We don't
getting.
count those private school kids, like if there's 5 of them, we don't count those in our count. We just levy the money from our taxpayers, so that money doesn't stay with us, so then we give it to the state, and then we get it, the state gives it to whatever private school.
And it's all determined, those, how are we advised of how many private school vouchers that we're supporting?
We're not.
We just get the bill.
We just.
So
So we
when
can divide the
that, in
bill.
October, when that final, general aid is certified, at that point, they have a certified number for private school vouchers. So I can find out the grade breakdowns in the dollar amount, that's it. So I can find out if there's 3 from grade 9, 12, and 1 from,
So we can do some
Eight,
math based on the breakdown.
that's why I can figure that out, I have access to that, but we have no idea if those are still even, we can't verify those students are even in our boundaries. Because we're only getting charged for students in our boundaries. But we have no way to verify that. And it's probably has some, I'm sure it has a lot to do with just the privacy of it, to not tell us, but we think we should be able to verify it somehow. Any other questions?
Just one question here. Way back when you were discussing the, I think you said something about all staff are, have an individual understanding that, you're all grant writers, right? Like you said.
Right, so
all-
anyone in our school district could be a grant writer if they chose to be.
And they're made well aware of that this is something that they should be looking into if they
Well,
need something extra.
I don't specifically tell each and every person, but it is, I think, pretty common knowledge as a teacher.
Sure. So in that video that you supply them for the
Yep.
individual.
And the video for the budget,
Video.
yes.
That's not mentioned in there.
No, that is not, but usually when I meet with them for their club budgets, that's where a lot of the grant monies will go. For example, I'm trying to think of the reading one that we got not too long ago for the kids to go to the library. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I think it was in fact Mrs. Moore that wrote for
The
it.
Mark Tauscher's grant.
Right, so that our 4K through grade 3 go over to the library and it pays the transportation for that.
Something else we do is that if we'll get emails or communications about available grants in specific areas, I'll either forward them to, if I get them or Pam gets them, we'll send them to like the building principal if they're a kind of general, like it could be for the science department or math department. A lot of times we get ones for our CTE department, so we'll kind of send them through and say, FYI, this is a grant that's available that might be applicable in your area. And sometimes they're already applying for it, like it's something we already utilize, or maybe it's we don't qualify with whatever the parameters are. So that's another way, but there's not really a formal process for like filtering other than individual teachers that would seek out grants or the stuff we get that we are aware of that we then apply for, other than some of those ones that are consistent that Pam presented on the federal level grants, the big ones.
The only reason I ask that question is because there's interest in possibilities of somebody having a grant writer for our school district. And I guess I like to hear things like all staff is aware of these grant opportunities, especially when we're a little tight on the budget, and trying to create a new position. There's a balance that has to be someplace in there. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Any opt-out arrangement update?
You're up again.
Yes. This one should take nearly as long. So when I presented back in November, I did like to date information and it was requested. It was requested to look at our June 30 to our July 1, because that was kind of where we were going. We surveyed staff who would change. So for the staff that already weren't on health insurance, so we would have had an extra 11 people at that point, so that was an extra $55,000 that we paid out. Then for our full-time staff that had health insurance for 22, 23, and then chose the opt-out arrangement for 23, 24, we paid $20,000. We saved $73,500, and then we netted a cost of about $1,500. This only depicts employees that had health insurance and opt-out arrangement changes. So our health insurance, depending which plan, the people that had health insurance, which plan they chose for the next year, the cost could have went up or down. It's very fluid. So if you ask me what these numbers are today, they've already changed. Especially with Marshfield Clinic, now eliminating more positions. Any of our staff that had maybe been covered by a spouse's insurance through Marshfield Clinic, if they lost their job, they have 30 days to go on our insurance. That could change again. Some of these opt-outs may go back to district insurance. So I think our primary goal is, we're seeing, from my perspective, I am seeing the younger staff that we hire taking opt-out. They're young enough to stay on mom and dad's, and it's an attraction to them to come to our district because the other district may be offering the exact amount of money for salary, but we're also offering an extra $5,000. You get them in our district, get them, see how great our district is, and now when they're off mom and dad's, they're gonna still stay with us even if they have to pay health insurance. I mean, I guess that's kind of the primary goal. It also helps with childcare staffing, even though it's a little slim pickings right now. A lot of our childcare staffing are dual income families that already have health insurance elsewhere. So it's very attractive to bring in a new hire and say, oh, you don't need health insurance, well, we also can offer you an extra $5,000 if you don't take health insurance. You know, they have to prove, obviously, they have health insurance, but elsewhere. But I think personally, I've had nothing but positive comments on this, having an opt-out arrangement. So when we come back in the spring in a couple of months here to review health insurance stuff again, I'll kind of look at these numbers again and see what kind of an impact we have, because we may have had a few people that were on the fence last year, maybe wanted to try out the new insurance company. Maybe there's some people along that would like to change, and we'll know more after May for that.
And it'll be interesting to look at this longitudinally over a couple of years to see how it shakes out. And as Pam mentioned, one of the big components why we proposed this was that another tool to try to attract staff, and even if it does come out, cost neutral, is that it's money going into the pockets of our folks rather than to the insurance companies. And they still have that insurance, but I think it will be, it's something that I haven't heard, negative input from staff, because they can still take the insurance if they want to. Pam is right in that most enticing to those that are under 26 that can stay on. If we have new staff that come in, the enticement of, and I didn't share this document with you guys. Mary Ann shared a news article from a paper on budgets where they break down average teacher salaries for districts north of like the CETA in this part of the state. For average teacher salary, I think we were 42 out of 43. Pittsville ranked for average teacher salary. These types of tools allow us to, at a neutral cost, at worst here, to be more competitive in that market for attracting staff here and stuff. So I would agree with Pam. It felt better when we had the original projections. It looked like we saved quite a chunk.
We were projecting like
$38,000 in savings,
but
which
all
was
that
a
takes
bonus.
is one person
Either way,
getting married or
Yeah.
doing, whatever. But the cost, like Jason was talking about for salaries and wages, there are so many other factors in that. I mean, we have been very cost friendly for health insurance here, very cost friendly. So school districts that rank in the top 10 may only pay 50% of the health insurance, or they have a $6,000 deductible for an individual. We have always tried to maintain very good health insurance. To someone who can be covered under a spouse or a parent yet, they could care less about health insurance, let's be real. They don't need to think about that at that point in time. That to them is a non-factor.
Just puts another tool in our toolbox
So it really does.
for
It
attraction.
really does with the outdoor recreation. Any questions?
You can have,
Next item is the WASB State Education Convention Review.
and I'd like to share some thoughts from the committee.
Yeah, so I just want to share the one thing that I think, and I've shared a little bit with Jason, but not all of it yet. But the one thing that I would strongly recommend for us to look into is the session that I went to on school social workers and the partnership with the county. And so when I see the 76,000 in Medicaid dollars, I actually think from the session I went to and how GET and ASIO have partnered with Trempealeau County, that we easily could have another 50 or 60,000 in that line item in partnership with our social worker position, partnering with the county. It's new. I don't think that it's happening anywhere in Wisconsin except GET and ASIO and Trempealeau County, but you know, Wood County is about the same size of being a smaller county. We certainly, the majority of our students are from Wood County, so there is some of those complicating factors where you have some Jackson and probably just Jackson.
Juneau.
Little Juneau.
Like a couple
And
Little Adams.
No,
Little splattering of names. But no different than GET and the fact that they're not 100% Trempealeau. But the partnership, and I think, you know, it's all run through the CCS program, which very aware of that, all run through either the CCS or the CLTS. So it's supporting and billing the supports for those families, and also just the amazing collaboration between the county and those families and the school district, which honestly, the school helping kind of step in and provide some of that support has a whole lot of stigma attached to it than getting involved with the county. I mean, it just does for families. And so some of that, I think, could be a really amazing opportunity for us to, now, you know, they were honest, and I also am very well aware of it because we do a ton of CCS and CLTS supports in my day job. You know, with it comes paperwork and comes, you know, some of the additional things, which are somewhat of a bummer, and actually, interestingly enough, was it the superintendent? It might have, it was either the superintendent principal or honestly, yeah, I think so. I don't think it was the county person, but he was at GET and went to La Crosse. And when he went to La Crosse, it actually wasn't the right work for La Crosse School District to have that connection with the county, mostly because the La Crosse social workers in the county programs were right there. So like if a family needed something, they could be there in like 5 minutes because they were right there. But at GET, it was like, gosh, they were coming from, you know, 30 minutes away, which is no different than Pittsville, being between Marshfield and Rapids, where if you were having a county social worker help support a family, they're coming from a good 20 to 30 minutes away. Like, it felt like we were their exact story, and how cool. And then the other thing I had just shared is it could also just be the right time. There's a new deputy director for Wood County. I've known her a long time, or I've known her for quite a while, and she's just all about relationships and partnerships. So it could just be the right time, and it could be a really cool opportunity, again, not only to enhance what our families have in that connection in a place where I think it's more comfortable for families at the school, but also why wouldn't we as a community and overall taxpayers leverage as much federal resources from that are available for our community. So that was a really cool session. I went and I was like really quite jazzed about what that could look like and what it could provide for kids and families here. And there's a lot of conversations and work, but they also had all of their names out there, and they're like, we will talk to your county people, we will talk to your school, like we will share how we made this work. And it started at GET, and then their social worker left and went to ASIO, and they've now implemented it at ASIO. So, super cool. So I just increased your line item on the Medicaid. So,
Any other thoughts? I just had, real quick, I had a couple. The two that stuck with me are, the first one was I said in my social media presentation, because I don't do any social media at all, so I found that interesting, the outreach that is actually there, and I came home and had some social media for it. So ours is a very good offering. For a district our size. Yeah, absolutely. And then, the other thing is like, I'm always concerned, like, the presentation you saw from Pam, which was excellent, is like, how concerned every school district that is like ours with finances, and how, living without some of the federal money that we become accustomed to is going to be a difficult thing in the future. So that, not that I wasn't always worried about money, but more to, it also, really drives home the point that it's not a situation unique to us. It's one that every district like ours is facing. So I guess that was what that was. Sobering news. Yes, sobering news. Okay, we'll move on to the discussion of action items. District calendars for the 24-25 and 25-26 school year. Yeah, but here's what I would tell, the board is, I'll kind of review the process we went through last year, which we kind of repeated this year without the survey, because the reality is resurveying the community a year later, I doubt if you're going to see a lot of changes as well using that data. So we formed a committee last year, made up of staff and administration. We met, I think, 3 times last year. We discussed like what parameters do we have to work within, and here's the reality of what we heard from staff and from the community. And it was some pretty tight parameters on a calendar here in Pittsville. It's people felt overwhelmingly we want to start after Labor Day and not apply for a waiver. Okay, that in and of itself restricts like what you can do with your days. Staff can start before that. We can count those as staff days, but we did not want to start with students prior to that. Then talking about things like spring break, like do you want a full week spring break? Pittsville had historically, well, I don't know how far back, because I hadn't been here for last year, ended by Memorial Day would be another thing. That didn't pull quite as strongly as the start after Labor Day, but it was something else. Folks wanted Good Friday off. That was something that popped up on just comments on the feedback. So then what we do is we look and we work off the minutes, like the DPI requires minutes. So we work backwards, and why we wanted to know that from people is, all right, what are we working with here for parameters? Because we have to fit these days within then those constraints that we have. And we sat down and we had multiple meetings to discuss what are the components of an effective schedule. And obviously an effective schedule should be student driven. It should be driven about what's best for students. We look at our staff development. So before last year, maybe Dr. Watson can talk longitudinally about this. When I came here, it was kind of an eye-opener to me when I first came here, is that we had, was it 9 days or 8 days consecutive professional learning days in August, Dr. Watson? Do you remember? It was either 8 or 9 days of 2 weeks of professional learning for staff. And what I will let you know, there's a lot of diminishing returns in that. And that was a little bit of a shock to me. And I was like, hey, if that's how we roll, let's see how it shakes out. After talking to staff, they had indicated too, is boy, they'd love to see some of those days. And as administrators, we felt too, it would be nice to have those days periodically throughout the school year to be able to reinforce and, refocus on those things that we are, that we are focused on as a district. So working under that parameter, we went through and tried to build a schedule. Now, there is no perfect schedule. There's absolutely no such thing as a perfect schedule. It's darn near impossible to meet all of the needs and wants that people have. So we kind of worked off of the overwhelming response we got from community and staff was they wanted a full week spring break. And we wanted to try to acknowledge, I will tell you, if you talk to staff, and what they would tell you is, it's about this time of the year where you are feeling like, I love my colleagues, I love my kids, but everybody kind of feels like you get into the March, you need a break, right? Looking at that, how Christmas falls has a big impact on the schedule, because in a year where it falls right, you catch enough days in there that you can do a week-long spring break without having to add days somewhere else. The next 2 years, we have elongated Christmas breaks with how Christmas and New Year falls. It's just the reality of, unless you want to bring back for 1 day in the middle, which I'm not doing that as long as I'm district administrator, unless I change my address and go to witness protection. So there were just so many components to look at. One thing we talked about is, I know Dr. Watson had brought this up last year, again this year, and I felt strongly too, about having a professional learning day for staff earlier, like in September. Well, Mrs. Meisner was on the committee, and one thing, Mrs. Meisner, we were talking about that on the committee to try to build that in. Mrs. Meisner's cranberry tours. And she had said, please don't have a day off while I'm doing tours, because, those are her students. It's just taking into account all these things that you don't think of. I felt like we had a very diverse group of staff at this committee meeting this year. So we sat down and we worked through this, and with the way, the breaks fell, one of the creative things we did is Good Friday is we had it a professional learning day, because we had families indicated they wanted to have Good Friday off. With staff, that wasn't quite as high. So we said that could be one of our professional learning days where we can families would still be able to have that day off, but we could get in one of our professional learning days and try to build them into each month. The one biggest change to the calendar this year was and I would tell you this, there are ways, well, another component was last year we had to end Dr. Watson, 1 or 2 terms in the middle of the week, just the way it shook out.
This clear?
No, for this year. Last year's calendar for this year, 2 terms, because what we try to do is keep the days close to equal for terms. You don't want to have one skewed, but you also know if you're going to have one skewed, your second term or second quarter, if it's falling in the winter months, there's a good chance you're going to have snow days. So that might be one that you can afford a little bit more. The committee wanted to focus on ending those terms either on a Thursday with a Friday professional learning day, day to do your transition, or on a Friday with a Monday, and those 2 calendars accomplish that. For the proposal is to end the terms on, not in the middle of the week on a Wednesday, where a teacher would have to transition from having a class on a Tuesday and then teaching another class on a Wednesday, like if it switched. So those days were able to line up. The other big change was, in order to make the minutes work and do a week-long spring break, we had to extend the classes for juniors and below to that following week, which would have been next year. It would be, I believe it's the 29th, 28th, and 27th, I think. And then staff having their final professional learning day on that Friday. So the reality is, we were still done by May. You do have juniors back. The seniors would be done and graduate. It's actually in board policy that the seniors graduate the Saturday before Memorial Day, which that's in policy. There's actually a board policy. This is not unusual. It's districts do this. My former district, we did this. My understanding is, I know back when I was going to school in Pittsville, I believe it was 2 weeks. Seniors were done 2 weeks prior to the other students. We graduated 2 weeks before the other students. So would I be able to tell you that academically this is this is really good? No. Is there some value into saying that your juniors and such get an opportunity to kind of to be the leaders in the building for 3 days? Yes, but the reality was to check as many boxes as we could. There was no way around this. Like, we had some people propose, well, what about if we get rid of that Wednesday before Thanksgiving? That was extremely popular with folks. They loved having that time to be able to travel for Thanksgiving and stuff. We could, but that's 1 day. We would still need to recover 2 days from somewhere. The only way to do that would be to take 2 more of those professional learning days that we have built in at the end of terms and move them into August. And we would go back to being 8 professional learning days in August, and we would lose 2 more of those month professional learning days. So I know that sounds like a lot, but it was, the feeling was with the committee, and we met twice, and then we communicated digitally after that, like with people proposals. And I sent this out 2 weeks ago to all staff. That was it. To all staff to say, hey, give some feedback. And I received 3 or 4 comments from folks about, the proposed schedules. I did not get any community feedback, nor would I yet, because this hasn't been rolled out to the community. Now, is it traditional to roll the calendar out to the community prior? No, because honestly, by us surveying the community, I feel we got more public input than most districts do by sending a survey out for all people to fill out, because we had a lot of people fill that out. 111 people filled that out with comments. So I would also tell you this, though, as a board. If the board felt like you wanted to have now these schedules go live because they're a part of the board packet and table this for vote until March, I don't believe I'm missing anything as far as a deadline for folks that the board could choose to table this. And I say this because The reality is, if you're hearing feedback that I'm not hearing about concerns about it, we could have a month for folks to see it. Here's the calendars. And if they want to come in and give some public input, I personally, I would be okay if the board wants to do that. I would also be okay telling you, I feel like with the surveys, and the reality is this, when we share it out with all staff, this is not proprietary where we say, hey, don't, like the reality is we're in a small community. As soon as we shared it with all staff, this was shared out in the community. Like people shared it with other people, which is evidence why we had some people sharing feedback that aren't staff, right? They got wind of it. So I just wanted to throw all that out there for the board.
Two quick things.
Yep.
One, on the 2024 schedule, there's a Sunday that's in yellow. I'm guessing that's an error.
I think that's Easter.
Is it just listed as it's part of the holiday?
Yeah.
Yeah, because holidays,
I think I have it in.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I look at this, I mean, I guess you're exactly right. When I look at just the 2024, Christmas is a long holiday. So there's the lesser of two evils in my mind of what it looks like. We could take away the 27th, the 23rd,
Mhm.
because, I mean, the next year, when it doesn't fall that way, we are coming on the 23rd. So the reason
Yes.
you've given the 23rd is because how nice for people to have that whole week and
Yes.
weekend before to travel, right?
Yep.
So we could take the 27th, the 23rd, and potentially the 18th and move that one. But the others are coming right after the term. Like, I wouldn't be willing as a board to give up more than one of those purple PLCs, considering how valuable and what they provide. I mean, maybe the 18th, but really the community would want to give up the 27th and 23rd for what you give on this year because Christmas is in the wrong spot to come back for a few days after.
Those were the discussions in the committee,
Well, I'm
that everyone
sure,
you're talking about.
right, I'm sure. And so, I mean, Christmas falls at a interesting time, which creates, gives and takes around that. I mean, I would be okay if there's no urgency with it. I mean, I'm okay approving this calendar. But if there's no urgency with it, I'm always about, if we feel like people want to give some input and feedback, like, why not put it out there? Let us, let people, just like we did with, the human growth and development, right? Like, let people be able to give some feedback. And so, I mean, I can go either way, because I think what you would have to change, I mean, like, neither of them are ideal with kind of how long Christmas has to fall, which creates that issue. And I would trust that the committee, including a nice cross-functional committee that you have, made the determination along with the feedback we've already received on, the lesser of kind of what you have to deal with when you have Christmas fall where it does. So I can go either way. I absolutely would support if we wanted to wait another month and let people get feedback, or I would be in favor of approving it. So
It
that's
makes
where I
zero
stand
difference
today.
to us if we would have tabled the vote till next month. If there were any drastic changes to be made, that would be the potential issues, is to have another month. I just can't envision that, because the reality is there just isn't a lot of wiggle room for changes to make.
Right, because the next year you could give up the Wednesday before and the second, which means you're coming back on Friday right after New Year's.
Yes,
I mean, we can.
we could do that.
And then give up one of the PLC, like that would, but both of them are kind of icky in their own ways because of how Christmas falls.
Conferences, parent-teacher conferences are gonna be at night again, both of them?
Yeah, and you set the high school ones already, correct? They're student led.
Okay, that's what that means.
Yeah, that's student led. The high school does student led conferences, and then I don't remember specifically if K-8 put all of theirs in, which is not unusual, as a lot of times those get set after the calendar's approved.
They're there. I see them on the point of the 16th of October. I just didn't see if it was a PM for both of them again.
How many people are on the committee that work on this?
12 staff and 2 administrators.
So I
Does
don't.
that sound right? Yep.
I mean,
It might be
it's
a little
fine with
high.
me if that's what everybody, if that's what you and the people think is best,
It's pretty frustrating though with just that 12. I mean,
It wasn't,
Trying to not frustrated, it was kind of.
That's a
If
lot.
it
It
was
was
on
time
discussion.
consuming about these discussions of like, a big one with the high school staff, and I would say the high school staff was probably overrepresented, but not in a bad way, it's just, we had a lot of high school staff out there. Their big thing was the terms, ending, like where the terms ended, and having like a day, one of those professional learning days after the end of the term. And that was something that was brought up. I mean, I would be interested to get Dr. Watson's perspective. He wasn't able to, he was on duty, so he wasn't able to attend the meetings. But, yeah, there was a lot of discussion. It wasn't, I mean, Deb took notes. It wasn't like it was like, this was easy. We spent a lot of time talking about, here's all the components. We had something set, and then we adjusted it, and about the time we felt like we had an answer, like I had said, Lindsay was like, oh, that's a cranberry tour week, and if we don't have school, then I'm gonna have to have these kids. Like, it was just trying to meet those needs, but it was very amicable, but yeah, it's very frustrating just because that's what a school calendar is. So, Dr. Watson.
Well, I respect what the committee put together. Decisions like this are made through compromise. And so I've never seen a perfect school calendar that meets all the objectives, because while you're trying to make the objectives that make the most sense for student achievement, you also have the reality that if you put the dates in the wrong places, your kids won't be there because they're going to be vacation no matter what. So I respect the work they did. This is the calendar they came up with. Until we decide as a community that we're not okay with the bookends of Labor Day and Memorial Day, then our calendars are all going to look about the same.
Is there anything we can do about Labor Day though? That's still set in law, isn't it?
No, you can apply for a waiver. We would, that was a big no on the survey last year of applying for a waiver. And a lot of people talked about Fair Week, like, because that's gonna bump things back.
That has decreased in our community. I mean, it's not as prevalent as
Yeah.
it used to be, so it'll be interesting to see if that feels a little different. I mean, I think that if we're going away from Memorial Day graduation, like, we gotta be talking a ways in the future, because like, it is so ingrained.
Yeah.
Like, that's when people graduate, that like, people have set their whole life around
The
that,
committee did
right?
not want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
I might
People
not.
with reservations a year in advance.
Julie, I would also, I would be remiss if I didn't tell the board that, many of you are probably familiar with children that are in extracurricular activities, is that football starts now the last week in July, high school football starts, volleyball starts, it's cross country. Is that for a lot of our students in here in Pittsville, we have a lot of student athletes that are involved, is the entire month of August is already, you're technically, we have 3 football games and before school starts. So that is certainly, like, I agree with you. I agree with you that it would just make sense to move that start date forward, because we already have the majority of our families that are already committed to sporting events and their kids are involved in this.
Well, and so we might approve these 2 years and then start to provide some
Yes.
communication that as we go to the next 2 years, we're really going to look at potentially not being
Earlier.
right of,
Yes.
things are starting in August, giving that availability of starting in August. I'm not a huge fan of bringing the kids back after graduation, even though a number of schools do it in our area. But what I will say is I am more of not a fan to change graduation and make everybody stay those extra 3 days and push back graduation another week. I think that that would be very difficult for people who have planned a very big event
Yes.
in their life, and put a lot of stuff around that, unless there was just a lot of communication way out into the future.
That was a non-starter in the committee once we even mentioned that for those reasons.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think the options in the future would be to try to do some legwork and some education on maybe looking at bumping that start, because that would give us a ton of flexibility if we could bump that up into August where we started and stuff. That would be the magic.
Are waivers easy to get?
If you give a rationalization for it, you will be approved for it. It used to not be that way, but now you will be approved if you can lay out a logical, student-centered, family-centered explanation for this is why we want to do this, so we can have 1 day per month of professional learning. There's a lot of components. The one thing we are comfortable with, the committee talked about, is a nice thing about being done earlier than other schools is for our kids to get a leg up for summer employment, for work, right? If they have a week or two where they're out there. And I didn't do data like all the other schools, but from the folks in the committee that are more familiar with Mr. Dennis stuff, that said that this still will keep us ahead of when other schools locally are graduating, to give our folks, and I'm not talking seniors because they would still be up, but for the other students to still get a leg up for getting summer employment or starting or taking a vacation before starting summer employment. So
Does anybody want to make a motion on it, or do we want to let it post and for feedback?
Fine, either way.
Does anybody feel strongly either way? So I'm fine, I mean, I'm fine with it as it is. The only feedback I've ever personally gotten is that people like spring break. That's like literally the only thing I've heard, so.
Like spring break in the right place.
Yeah.
This is the
Wasn't
right-
last year very late?
Yes.
Yes.
And that was not as popular.
No, this one is in a better place. And obviously, you look like a genius when the weather's nice during that, and when the weather's not nice, then you look like an idiot, right? It's like I can predict the weather, right? But yes,
So if anyone wants to make a motion, we can, or we can just table it for next meeting. I don't-
I'll make a motion to approve the district calendars for the 24-25 and 25-26 school year as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any discussion? No discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
January 11th, people comment.
I'll make a motion to approve the count of 548 students in attendance on January 11th, 2024 Google Class.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item C, HS State Academic Excellence Scholarship recipient.
Yeah.
Want me to move on?
Yeah, so, as you know, this one goes to the student with the highest GPA but they have to go to Wisconsin school to use it. And so board policy says they have to the 15th of February. We need those dates. The student is deciding probably a Minnesota school, which would move down the list to the next student, but we're gonna give her some days to think about it.
Okay. So,
Mr. Nutt, has that been through email to the board in 2 days?
correct.
Okay.
If that would be acceptable to the board.
then, I think it's fine, but then do we have to meet before the next board meeting to approve?
I believe the motion, and Deb, help me with this one, could we make a motion to approve pending that individual's acceptance, the
Well,
person who's in
can't I-
second?
Yeah, can't we make a motion to approve, and we can put their name in, right? So, because you just told us who valedictorian was, so it's Lillian Obie,
Yeah, but she's very, I would say she's
to,
quite unlikely to accept it.
right, so a motion to approve that she would be the recipient of the PHS State Academic
Yep.
Excellence Scholarship if she attends a Wisconsin school.
Okay.
If not,
Yes.
the board is making a motion to approve Kaden Fox. No, we have to go down to number 3, who's number 3?
Sadie Eichstead.
Who?
Sadie
Sadie
Eichstead.
Eichstead.
Sadie Eichstead as the PHS State Academic Excellence Scholarship recipient for the class of 20.
Because Kaden is attending,
Yeah,
Kaden had
it's
the,
aerospace is that.
yeah, got it.
So if we do nothing, is it a problem just to do it at the next board meeting, or does this have to be done?
No,
next
it
meeting?
has to be done by,
Board policy is February 15th.
That's what I thought, because I remember we had to meet specifically for this last.
Okay. Yeah, that-
In the mornings.
What you said makes
Because
sense.
of the person, the decision, yes.
So can we make a motion to approve based on that, or do we need to meet?
no, we'll go with that motion.
Okay,
I believe
feel
that that
very
would be
comfortable making that
perfectly
motion.
comfortable.
Okay.
Yes.
I will second that motion.
Deb, you got that? You want to repeat it?
I can always go ahead and keep going.
Is there any other conversation? Right, all in favor?
Hi. Awesome for kids. And then the technical excellence?
This is no surprise if you watched the news in the last year and the amount of times he's represented us, for explaining how our equipment works in the tech lab. This is Logan Bellman.
So I'll make a motion to approve Logan Bemmel as the PHS State Technical Excellence Scholarship recipient for the class of 2024.
I'll second.
All right, any other conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item E, April 2nd, school board election, paper ballots for the town of City Point and the town of Quincy.
Make a motion to approve the April 2nd, 2024 school board election paper ballot for the town of City Point and town of Pittsville.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion to approve this ballot.
Okay, all in favor?
Is it appropriate for me to abstain? Because I'm on it? It doesn't matter? Okay.
Second vote.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excuse me?
Feels cleaner.
Appointing board of canvassers,
No motion needed on this. Wednesday,
No, we
April
need a
3rd,
motion.
2024.
we need them for the people meeting.
We need a motion to appoint.
Yep.
Mark.
To appoint the canvassers.
Oh,
Again, I'm not gonna make it.
Mark Dyer and Karen Gables.
So motion,
I'll make a motion to approve Mark Dyer and Karen Gables to the board of canvassers along with school board.
So,
Julie's
did
chair.
you get my email?
Yeah.
So I'm not available at that time, so I don't know if you want to set someone else, a different board member, or
I
you
think I
can
can just
change
have
the
you
time
sign the stuff
after.
after.
Okay, sounds good.
Motion.
there's a motion,
Then I'll second that motion.
okay. Any conversation? All in favor? Aye. Stan? Julie?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, right. The date and time of Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024 at 1 p.m. in the district office. Item F, rough track analysis.
So just a little history on RevTrak. Actually been around much longer than I have. When I began in 2015, it was $2.50 per transaction that was collected by the school district through RevTrak. So RevTrak is our third-party provider for people to make credit card payments or debit card payments or a bank ACH payment through our website. So that's our third-party provider for that. We have had the charge at $2.50 for a very long time. Then in July of 2023, RevTrak increased their fees to a monthly rate of $19.95 plus 3.49%. Now, and since I've actually written this, they've increased as well to 4.19. I did add it to the top here, since I had originally prepared this a couple of months ago. So gift cards, debit cards, credit cards are now 4.9% fee to the district. And all e-cards, which would be a bank ACH, is 3.49% per transaction, plus a flat rate of $19.95. So if you look at all the math, if we do the average, the percent that the district is collecting of total sales only comes out to about 2.42%. So it's costing the district about 1.85% based on the overall fees we're getting charged, are netting at about 4.27%. So it's not gonna scroll. So if we split the difference in percentages, it would be 3.35% we would charge per transaction. I'm not a fan of that because then whether someone puts in $10 or $1,000, because you have some people that just funded at the start of the year for $1,000, they would be charged 3.35%. So I also looked at it as a cost per transaction. And with the same numbers, basically we come down to a cost per transaction of $3.45 if we split the difference between what we're getting charged and what we're collecting. And so we're only collecting, again, $2.50 per transaction, which benefits those that want to make those bigger payments. And I'd like to encourage that because it's less work for Mr. Andres, it's less work for us in the business office if people do that. So I'd like to try to start getting the district in line with what the credit card and the bank fees and stuff are being charged to the district from this third-party provider. So with the board's approval, I would like to do a split the difference cost per transaction increase of $3.45 to take effect as of July 1st. So we have plenty of time to communicate it to families And again, there's just no fees whatsoever if they send in cash, if they send a check. It's just when they use the third-party provider, because the cost to us are getting so high. Over the years, it doesn't equate to a ton of money, it's probably $1,000 or less. And if you think how many meals $1,000 could have helped somebody, it does equate to quite a few. So my proposal, my request would be that the board approve the increase of cost per transaction to the $345 versus the $250.
It wouldn't be an increase of 345, it would be an increase to 345.
$3.45. So a person, with $10 transaction is still paying the same amount to someone that's putting in $1,000.
So if they pay a $10 amount, they're paying $3.45.
Only online. If they want to send a check in or cash with their kids, they pay nothing. This is for them to use that because we're getting charged that $250 regardless.
So we have a few people that have auto pay on their credit card, so that if it gets below like a $5 balance, then they'll get the notice. Well, they're already getting phone calls, that's $25 amount, because that's what our policy states, so they're starting to calls already at 25, and then calls become more frequent as it goes below negative, or.
I read somewhere in here that there might be an increase again next year.
I would reevaluate it to see if we're closer, if we would need to even consider it. I honestly don't see the third-party fees going down, and we have a different third-party provider that we collect credit cards for our childcare through, it's a Bambora / Worldwide third-party provider, and their fees are approximately the same. So I don't think it's the provider, I just think that's an industry standard at this point.
And do you charge in the childcare the percent fee to the person making the credit card versus giving you a check?
It's all online payment. So if they make a bank transaction, it's a 60-cent charge, and if it's a credit card transaction, it's anywhere depending on what card they use, from $3 to 3% to 5%, depending on what card they use. If they pay cash or check, there's no fee.
And for RevTech, is ACH cheaper than credit?
Bank
card?
ACH is 3.49% per transaction.
Okay. So again, I support this. I think anywhere you use your credit card, you pay your fee now. If I was asked my opinion, I might say it should be the percent of what we're getting charged versus a flat fee for different things, but I can be persuaded either way. But that would probably be, if I was asked my thought on that, the only thing I would ask is, and I think we can put this through, but when we renew with our bank, I think that we should at least ask the question. We'll never get away from credit card fees, but ACHs, banks offer better than this. Like, there are opportunities versus using RevTech. I just don't know if there's something we can do to help if someone needs to use an ACH. We can't fix it today, but maybe something to look at.
I mean, we used to have a Clover Go and did our own credit cards in-house, like for art shows and tech ed and things like that. It was just so cumbersome to do it.
Sure.
I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, honestly, to do a third party and do it in-house through the bank. I mean, we're getting 5 a day, lunch accounts, and, maybe 1 or 2 a day, up to 5 a day in childcare. That would be a full-time job for someone in the district to manage it, to keep track of it, to go in. I mean, you have to ACH to get money out of people's account. I mean, that's a lot of work. And these third-party providers, I mean, RevTrack does a ton of stuff. I mean, we can use them for other things too. It integrates right into Skyward. It pulls all the information into Skyward. Where if we went through the bank, then we would also have to now re-enter everything into Skyward. Where RevTrack pulls it automatically.
But my guess is you're gonna have to do all that work if people start sending checks instead of paying the fee too.
He already does.
Correct.
Yeah.
But RevTech doesn't do that for us, we do it.
Right, correct, he already does that. And Julie, to answer your question too, I thought about the percentage, but why, I thought to myself, why do I wanna prohibit someone from writing that $500 check or that $1,000 check at the start of the school year, when they know they're gonna still have to pay the same amount for a year versus sending in $25 every week or whatever, you know? This way, if they send me $1,000 or send the school $1,000 for food service, they only pay $3.45.
Yeah, my guess
It's
is
helped to
someone,
keep people in the
right.
negative all the time, because we have a big
Yeah.
issue with that right now.
my guess would be that the person that writes the $1,000 is gonna write a check versus paying the 3% fee. That's what we see. Again, we charge anyone who gives money to us the fee, right? Like, that's pretty common. People who are higher giving of money have switched to not use a credit card, to not pay the fee, and writing the check. So again, it doesn't matter. I mean, I will go with whatever you feel is the right recommendation. Those would be my only, but actually having the fee go to the person who's using that. I mean, you don't go anywhere without paying the fee when you use your credit card. That is so common these days that I absolutely would support that.
I would support it. My worry is a parent who doesn't understand the $3 fee
Mhm.
and they quickly put $10 on and all of a sudden we hit
Yes.
them with a $3 fee that they weren't expecting.
Exactly, and that's why if you make this effective July 1, we're gonna start communicating it April or May.
And they are
Yeah.
they are currently, to clarify, when they go through that process on the checker, it says you're gonna be charged a fee.
Yes,
They're
they know they
getting
will
a
be
$2.50 fee right now.
Yes.
So this will be an increase of $1, but they're already.
So they
going
already
through-
see they're
They,
paying that.
Correct.
they usually will tell you RevTrak is charging the user a $2.53 fee to make this deposit, yeah. And we're gonna try to encourage, Rick, the reality is, when we communicate this with families is, if you wanna send a check or cash in, it doesn't cost a penny to try to get folks to use that method so that the money isn't going for the fees for those transactions.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and if the board does approve that, then tonight, then we'll come with, our policy reads $2.50, we would come then with that,
Next meeting.
you know, fixed in like April or whatever, so it goes into effect for July 1.
All right, thank you.
Bill, you're up again.
Yes, but we need a,
Entertain a motion.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
To increase the fee.
I motion that we approve increasing the fee from $2.50 to $3.45 effective July 1st, 2024.
Awesome.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Okay, item G, line of credit review and resolution.
so there were a lot of documentation, that have come through to you. But the primary, you know, we've kind of discussed this back in October already, just the shortfall of cash, because we have had to have a deficit budget. Our fund balance isn't as healthy as it had been in the past. There have been times this year when we've had 3 payrolls in a month that Jason and I are probably both losing a ton of sleep on, because we honestly don't know if we can have the cash in our account to make payroll. And I even had someone ask me, not Mr. Knott, but I had someone ask me, can't you just move it from Fund 46 over? And I said, no, we can't do that, because once money goes to those other funds, we can't always bring it back. So this is to set up a line of credit. It doesn't mean we're gonna use this line of credit. It will get renewed, for the following school year. I've already been assured that by the bank. I believe we need to have the resolution approved in the full note read. Is that correct? I believe that's how it was worded. And do you want me to go through each and every document, or do you have a chance to kind of look at them along the way? Because there were some signatures, some of you are kind of responsible for certain signatures. Do you want me to go through anything specifically?
I did not read through.
Okay.
We have it here.
Okay, well then, we would have to go through the resolution and, it did not say we had to read this out verbatim. And I did do a quick math calculation based, someone I thought might ask, it says the SOFR rate. There's a calculation, I'm not sure if it's in this one or not, where it talks about the interest rate. But one of them said it was 80% of that rate plus 2.5%. As of February 5th, when I calculated it, it was a 6.76% line of credit, which really, most lines of credit right now are about 8.5%. But we may not need to use this at all. If we use this, we're allowed to spend on this through June 30th, then we cannot spend anything. We need to have whatever balance is on this paid off by November 1st. That's just the way it works for school districts. We can't, spend the line of credit or use the line of credit spending at all.
So it's solely for the
During
purpose
August.
of the money that hasn't come to us
Yeah,
yet.
while we're waiting for
Right.
ABS to come.
So we're basically putting up for collateral, whatever our levy money might be
Right,
coming in.
because we
for
don't
the
have
next
enough
month.
in fund balance any longer to cover that.
And the timing this year has been really bad because we've had payroll like a week and a half before a Monday grant payment. Or the Mondays, because they usually do it like on Monday, the DPI is sending money, we're transmitting payroll on a Wednesday. That's happened to me twice this year already. It's been very tight.
And do we have to use? Do we have, I'm struggling with pulling where, like, bond council, Michael Willis? No. No, do we have to, is there a particular entity we must use for our line of credit? Is there a reason we're not using Associated?
It is Associated Bank.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks. I was
Yes,
like struggling to find that.
It is
Like, is there a reason we're
Associated
not
Bank.
using our bank?
yes, no, we're not,
And,
but they just have they use like an acronym in there. I don't remember what it is, but it is Associated Bank.
and so it's Associated and the interest rate they're giving us at Associated is 7 point some%.
Well, right, as of February 5th, it's calculated out to 6.76%. So yes, right here, oh, go up just a little bit down. Right here, 80% of the 30-day average plus 2.5%. So when I calculated that out, it was 6.76% on February 5th.
If money's withdrawn from this, what are the plans to, I guess, are we gonna be paying back as we can, or annually, or?
No, I would pay, so like, on that scenario I had, we had money coming in on a Monday, because I knew the money was coming in, I knew exactly what was coming in, but we had to transmit payroll Wednesday, they did on Friday. So that money on Wednesday, it's like, okay, how are we gonna fund that? Because if I don't, the way our ACH for payroll works, if the money's not there, the whole thing fails. So Jason and I both said, well, we wouldn't take our checks.
Yeah, we were at that point where Pam
We
and I
would-
were
we
not
would
taking
take our
paychecks
checks
together.
that
It was
week,
that close.
And we
So-
transmit everybody else's. So then on Monday, as soon as I was able to, well, I wouldn't have been able to make the payment until Tuesday because the money hits from DPI on Monday, I would have paid it back on Tuesday.
So how do we come up with $400,000 and why such a
That's-
high amount?
That's the limit they would give us, so he just gave us the
Oh.
max limit that they would give us. I said the most I
Is that
could
what
ever
it
see us
requested?
needing at one time, because payroll runs around 138,000 net, plus the 941 deposit would also need to be made, that's about 40,000. I said, I would never see us needing more than 200,000 at any one time to make payroll. So that's, I supplied, like, what our levies were for this year, what our sparsity and things like that was for this year, and I think 3 years worth of audited financials.
Do you see any other examples on where we would use this?
No.
Nope.
Just payroll.
Just to make.
At
the
this point,
situation.
this is strictly
Is it a
literally
sweep
short-term
account?
borrowing.
Is it a sweep account?
No.
So you would tell them to
I would
move
have to
over
say,
money to the line of
move
credit
the
they're not
money
saving?
over, because I would be able to tell, we usually have payroll done on a Monday, we just have to transmit it by Wednesday or Thursday. I would know by Monday, they would transfer the money and then we could make the payment, or the payroll.
The only thing I would put in is, again, I'm in favor of this. If this is something we see ourselves needing into the future, I think it needs to get looked at in regards to our entire banking relationship. And this is just another factor on assuring that now we're gonna be paying interest on something. Is this what the going rate is everywhere, and how does that figure into everything? So I would just ask, again, not right this moment, but as we do this, if we need this, just to assure that this rate and this cost is factored into that whole piece just moving forward. But that's not a today discussion, because this is of course who we're gonna use for this, it's our bank. So, but otherwise I completely, we need to be able to make payroll on money we're expecting that the state doesn't give us time to. So, I would approve with a quorum of members elect of the school board present in person, the resolution for tax and revenue anticipation note for the revolving line of credit in an amount up to $400,000 pursuant to S 6712(8)(a)(1) Wisconsin statute, and to issue its tax and revenue anticipation note and evidence of such borrowing. The note was read in full and on motion duly made and seconded, duly adopted and recorded by the affirmative vote of at least 2/3 of the members of the school board. A true and complete copy of the resolution is attached as Exhibit A. The resolution has not been amended or revoked and is in full force and effect on the date of the certificate, and there is no proceeding of the district or district selectors in conflict with or in any way altering the effect of the resolution.
I will second that motion to approve.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor?
So do we need to read the full note? Can we waive the reading of the full note? Because it says in here that we have to read the note,
Then I think we need to read the
read
note.
the full note.
Oh, Lord,
That
I've been
didn't say,
forewarned,
it's 4.5
Neat.
pages long.
who's the fastest reader? I think that's very clear what it says there, and what I'm reading is it needs to be read in full, and I would hate to see it, yes.
So even though we read it, it has to be read out loud.
Does it say
it
that?
doesn't specifically state it has to be read out loud.
Yeah.
It just said it was read in full.
So could the board certify that they've read it in full?
And they will become public record documents once they're signed. So if the board
Do you want to just do a
Just
roll call
states
that
that
we've
they
all read it with that
read
word?
it in full.
Yes.
So Nate, do you want to call for a roll call?
The roll call vote, this was the note.
Yes.
Correct.
Right, the
Attachment
one
A.
that's up right here.
Attachment A. To verify, call a roll call vote to verify the members present who read attachment A.
Chris,
Yes.
Nate,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Julie, yes.
There are documents there that Chris,
Yeah,
Nate, and Julie all need to sign.
Our life away. I
Yes,
saw
that's
it.
all color coordinated for you.
Thank you so much.
Next item is legislative update.
So, two quick ones is that, and this is from Mary Ann, she sent that email to the board. The 4K collaboration with community-based childcare centers is something that's coming up. That will not impact us. It's not like in the past. That would be for a community that maybe had to encourage them to collaborate if they were going to develop a 4K program, to do that in conjunction with local childcare centers where they would be 4K sites for the school district. Well, our childcare center is part of our school district, so it's not applicable. The other one is that likely to pass is the funding for the Office of School Safety. If you remember, that was in flux, that may not have been funded. It's looking positive that we're going to see funding for that, for the Office of School Safety. Those would be the two main points she asked to kind of go over tonight. That's all I have.
Does anybody have anything comments to add to that? Okay, are there any public comments? Okay, future agenda items?
Just that we would move the safety presentation to March, to the March board meeting. That was scheduled for tonight, so Chief DeWitt can attend. Pam? Yes, I feel that we should probably, in light of our budget presentation tonight, that in March, I would like to have a discussion, have the board have a discussion about potentially looking at, funding moving forward, potentially discussing the availability of an operational referendum that we would explore what that looks like. Pam and I have had some preliminary conversations just with some companies that help facilitate the planning process, that we would be able to share some documentation with the board, just projections. We're not paying anybody for anything right now. We just met with some folks, actually people we heard about at the WASB presentations at the board. So I would like to add that on, that we start having that discussion, because I think you saw through the budget presentation here tonight, if we're going to look at sustainability here and replenishing the fund balance, we're going to have to look at all options. So Mary and I can discuss that at our pre-board meeting here when she gets back. That would be all I have.
Okay, do I entertain a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
You got your
All in
signatures.
favor?
I gotta get the road. We got the signatures to sign, and then thank you everyone for moving the meeting up. We're at 7:15, but I'm gonna do a grand entrance. I said, I told the girls that I'm gonna play Rocky, and I'm gonna come around and record it.